Cybernation Uncensored.
So, hopefully we're live and people can hear us. So I am Cybersmily with another episode of the Forlorn Dopes with my co-host.
Greetings, programs. I am Wisdom, and I am here to talk about some Cyberpunk.
Yep. Again, okay, great. We sound good in the stream, which is... I was able to figure out what was going on with OBS. Awesome.
Yeah, that's very encouraging.
And for future listeners who join us on Twitch, please let us know if either me or him are not coming in loud and clear. I will do my best to fix whatever needs to be fixed. Yeah.
With the way Twitch works, it kind of has to be done sometimes on the fly like that.
Yeah. So, let's start off with our normal round of what's new with Cyberpunk in the coming months, or what just happened.
Artel Saurian just dropped some previews of their Tales of Night City book coming out.
Yep.
Which is supposed to be 9 fully formed, fleshed out adventures. They dropped some of the art for it, and the art looks pretty good.
Yeah, I can't wait until August. I think they said when Gen Con hits. I really need to get out to there again. It's been...
I've never been.
I went... I want to say I went back in 2003, 2004. It's an experience to see that many people, that many gamers in one location. But yeah, so we can definitely look forward to that. Rob says he's going to be heading out to Gen Con with his wife, Val. Awesome, man.
That would be awesome. I would love to go. Sadly, that is not in the picture, but I've always wanted to see it, just to meet the people.
Yeah, so for those who are listening and not seeing the stream or the chat we have, so Rob Mulligan and his lovely wife Val from Cybernation Uncensored, they're going to be...
They are our hosts.
They are going to be at the Sirenscapes booth, booth 1740 at Gen Con if you do attend. So I would definitely tell everyone to go and check him out in the Sirenscape booth, because if those who do not know, Sirenscape has a Twitch channel. Rob is running a awesome Cyberpunk Red campaign with some great people on it. And I've been following them, and it's definitely a must-see if you like live play.
Sirenscape is really, really cool. I've been following them for about a decade now, I think. And just the idea of what they're trying to do, letting you add sound effects and background music and all that tailored to whatever you're doing on the fly it's always seemed like a really cool concept. I've never been able to afford it. I had a free trial for it once, and I used it to great effect. It's very cool. So, yeah. I'm glad to see the collaboration between Artel Saurian and Cybernation Uncensored and Sirenscape.
Yeah, I've tried to do mute music and sound effects within some of my games. And granted, I haven't tried it with my new party, but oftentimes my previous parties usually didn't appreciate it. They said it was too distracting. I even got into like the mood lighting and stuff like you had on in your little den. But my players never
Oh
really got
god, I
into
miss
it.
my game room.
Someday, man.
Yeah, it can be distracting. I've talked about that at length. It really has to be like a trial and error situation.
Yep.
Where you find out what works right for your group, for the acoustics in the room, because you never want it to drown out what's going on. You
Right.
just want it to be part of the gaming experience, enhance. Yeah, it worked out well for me, but I was only able to use it for a short time.
Yep. The other thing from Altarzorian, well, there's two other notices. One is the announcement that Jay Gray is now the product line manager for Cyberpunk Red, which that is a promotion for him. So congrats on
Yeah.
that. And James Hunt is now the lead designer or product designer for Cyberpunk Red as well. So both of them, kudos.
Yeah.
James
Congratulations,
has been leveled up to
fellows.
senior designer. Yeah, so awesome. The other thing that came out of Arthouse Saurian is the a DLC for some new cyberware.
Well, I mean, they put out an actual, like, for free RPG day. There was an actual, like, product that they put out. You could actually like get your hands on it. Unfortunately, I was not able to get to the store and get a copy. So if anybody's got an extra copy, I'll buy it from you.
What was it? The quick start.
Yeah, it was like the quick start rules.
Yeah, like a light version.
Like an even more simplified version of Red. Like even more simplified than what came in the starter pack, I guess.
I think there's some rules that have changed since the Jumpstart kit compared to full blown Red, but yeah. And again, I really think Red can really be boiled down very quickly to a very simplistic rule set of, hey, stat plus skill plus a D10 versus a difficulty number.
Yeah, I mean, once you've got a basic understanding of how the rules work, you can run that shit just on the fly anywhere, anyway.
Yep.
It's been like that since 2013. I mean, everything boils down to D10 plus the number on your sheet plus that's it. There you go.
Right.
If you've got character sheets, you can play. And the character sheets don't even have to be as complicated as we make them. We make them complicated to cover everything, but really, you just write down a couple of key skills and some stats, and you're good to go. So, yeah, you can simplify Red and Interlock quite a bit.
Yep.
Just as a starter, or just as a run on the fly. Hell, I don't know if I think I've talked about this before. I went to Colorado with a friend one year from here in Arkansas, and the entire time there and back, I was just running a Cyberpunk game. I had to take over driving because he kept trying to throw dice while he was driving, and that got dangerous fast. I was like, no, I'm going to drive. You just sit here.
Yeah, I've done that where the GM was like, yeah, I'll run a game, and it was like a long haul. There used to be this awesome game store that was like over an hour from my house. So once every month or two, a bunch of us would just cram into a car and drive down there. And one day, the driver was like, yeah, I'll run a game. And hey, and he basically ran a game in his car as he was driving, rolling dice on the highway, speeding along.
Man.
Yeah.
I used to.
Good times.
In addition to like making a monthly tour of all the comic book and gaming stores in my area when I lived in Kansas City, I also worked at Friendly Frank's distribution. One of my jobs there was to deliver comics, first out to Des Moines, Iowa, and then like after that it was all over Kansas. And so I got to go to all these crazy rural game shops, and man, I don't remember the names of any of them, but there was the one I delivered to in Des Moines was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was so when a crash happened with the gaming scene, you really couldn't find too many games. But lately, I've been finding pretty nice stores popping up. Because I think most of the income now is from renting out tables, which, hey, I see it as a very legit compared to the old days in which you used to be able to get a table for free. They just sold the product, but now
I mean, if it keeps the brick and mortar stores open, by all means, do whatever you need to. I don't think they're not getting ridiculous with the prices. Like, I don't do it. Just I did it for a while. There was a gaming store here in town that we used to game at, but it kept getting taken over by like obnoxious Magic players, or Nazi Warhammer players. So we moved out into the mall, proper at one of just the tables in the mall, and from there on we had great gaming fun.
And the one thing I have to say about this new generation of game stores, a hell of a lot cleaner than the game stores I used to go to.
They're not the dens of troglodytes that they used to be, like dirty, dark. And don't get me wrong, some of the best gaming stores I've ever been to in my life were dirty and dark, and it kind of felt like finding a cave of wonders. But having nice, clean, inviting, friendly places, that's definitely a bonus for the hobby. Plus, yes. I think in addition to the Magic games, like a lot of the focus has switched to board games, which is only a good thing.
Yep.
Gaming is gaming.
Yep. So moving along, the other thing is a DLC that Artelsarian dropped, which was a supplement of cyberware. There's quite a few from previous versions, like the Cyber Pillow that they introduced, Kill Display, Neon Turn On, or Leads Turn On, Show Off Nails. I can't believe they
it's just the pure aesthetic stuff. Like that's my favorite cyberware, like that kind of stuff, because it just adds style. It's not there to give you a bonus to anything. It's not there to give you an advantage. It's just there to let your character have a little bit more style and uniqueness. I imagine they're saving like the good stuff for the Chromebook whenever it's going to come out. But
yeah, I hope so.
It's nice to get a teaser of the tasty just flavor stuff.
Yeah, and I want to say great minds think alike, because they have the Hollow Projector Palm, which actually had cool. On my site. I have the Hollow Hand, which I put out back in 1999. I don't know if I inspired.
Well, hey, you're moving on up. I mean, I'll take it. If I were you, I'd brag to the high heavens about that. Hey, something I did.
I don't know if James Hunt saw that or just came up with it on a whim and saw it as a missing component within the game, which I felt at the time back in 2020 for the 2020 version definitely should have been around. So that's our Tarsarian. The other big news is we have about a little over an hour and a half left on the Come On, Siam, Cool Minis or Not Kickstarter for the Cyberpunk 2077 Gangs of Night City board game. If you haven't heard of this Kickstarter, well, if you're listening to us right now, hey, go check it out. Kickstarter, type in Cyberpunk 2077. There's various pledge levels. I think the lowest is $10 to at least get into the pledge manager, which means if you put in $10, you get to the pledge manager, and then you decide, hey, I want to go the full Nelson and get as much as I can, or pick and choose as you need. The other levels are the standard level, which I think is $100 some odd, which gets you the basic book and all the add-ons, And then there's legendary, which gets you the basic game plus all the extensions and all these other fun things. From my point of view, it's well worth the money, just for the minis alone, especially if you are the tabletop player. Specifically because the minis are like 32 millimeters, so they're on par, I think, with
Fully compatible.
Yeah, and I think they're on par with Monster Fight Club's
Honestly, I wish I could afford it just for the miniatures. They all look good, and Cyberpunk miniatures are hard to find, especially at an affordable rate like that.
I mean, granted, the buy-in is pretty steep, but the value per miniature is roughly around $2 to $3 a mini. And if you guys if you do not have a 3D printer, even with the 3D printer you get the STL files, but if you
it's still a bargain.
It's still $2 to $3 is unheard of when it comes to mini, because I think I just posted a link in the chat for those who are here and listening to us right now. But I think Monster Fight Club's minis are like 3 for like $30, somewhere around there. I know they're at least $8 a piece. So
yeah, they're super expensive,
and the quality looks pretty good, from what I've seen. So, and again, I kind of looked at the game mechanics, barely understanding the actual board game. I was more into the minis. But yeah, it looks like an interesting game. A lot of add-ons to it. But if you can afford it, kudos. If you can't, apologize. You got the what was it? The FOMO happening.
Just today, like a little bit before we started the podcast, I got an update from Monster Fight Club on the Combat Zone game. Looks like the miniatures for it have been manufactured. The core game is being printed and manufactured in China. So it's moving along. Hopefully.
So now
we see that before too long.
So now we have to just wait for shipping. So you figure you probably they're estimating Gen Con. I'm figuring that they're probably going to ship these around Thanksgiving. That's my conservative estimate.
Yeah, that was the last big money purchase I was able to make before everything went to shit on my end. So I'm very much looking forward to finally getting my hands on this.
Yep. And I know Cyber Nation's Kickstarter. You guys are, if Rob is still listening, you guys are getting close to shipping. Last update I saw.
Yeah, man, that stuff looks so cool.
Yeah, with all
again,
the magnets.
Something I very much wish I could have afforded, but it's badass looking.
Yeah, so
I love the dice boxes
with the plexiglass, and yeah, I think that's gonna look awesome.
I mean,
and the dice case.
I'm a sucker for that kind of thing.
With the ammo.
Yeah, and the dice tower with the removable placards.
Yeah, when I was...
I'm a sucker for all that kind of stuff.
And, again, I feel bad for telling you this, but when I was gaming with Mike at TotalCon, he had these dice, which were basically six-siders that were made into bullets.
Ooh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, so They look like kind of bullets, and you
That
just
sounds
roll
totally
them.
Mike too.
And they have all the pips, and you just roll them and it gives you the numbers. And I think they're going to look awesome in the ammo case dice set.
Yeah, that sounds pretty freaking awesome, let me tell you.
Oh, 90% shipped out. So
Oh, very cool.
hopefully I'll be getting mine soon.
Yeah, I have not seen those pics anywhere. I'm gonna have to keep my eyes open. Thanks, Rob.
So moving along,
On a
or go ahead.
yeah, on a non-official status, there's a new Love, Sex, and Robots out. It's pretty good. I'm only 3 episodes in. I believe you've watched the whole thing already, Will?
Yes. So
I'm late to the party as always.
yeah. So one of the ones we saw was the crab, which yeah, I agree. I think it's because it's animation that it kind of slipped in, but I really don't see what it has to do with love or sex and robots.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first episode was great. I loved seeing the return of the 3 robots. They were one of my favorite segments from the first season. It's a bit. This one's a bit dark. All the ones we've watched so far have been really dark. The crab one, again, like you said, it doesn't. There's no love, there's no sex, and there's no robots. So I'm not sure why it's there. It's cool, but I mean, at least there's plenty of violence.
Yep.
The one with the astronaut on Mars or wherever they're supposed to be, Jupiter. They're on
Jupiter,
Io.
yeah, one of the Jupiter moves.
It's really pretty. It's really gorgeous. But again, I'm not sure why it's there.
Yeah, kind of sci-fi. I kind of enjoyed it. On the alien life, getting into it, but you still got. I'm trying to think how many more episodes before you get to the Cyber Bear. But that episode is very good.
Yeah, we'll probably finish it up tonight. If not tonight, then by tomorrow we'll have seen them all. So next week I can talk more in depth. I did finally finish Ghost in the Shell.
So we can talk about
it. Oh yeah, the last 2 episodes are just pure what the fuck territory. I've got to say overall, I did not enjoy Standalone Complex 2045. The first season was tolerable, but the second season, I maintain that Purin is the most obnoxious character I've ever seen, because she just completely does not belong in Ghost in the Shell. Like, she is the worst cliche of the naive, super cute, super innocent schoolgirl. Like, she would belong in Project A-ko and get along just fine there, or even something like Martian successor Nadesco. But in Ghost in the Shell, she just sticks out like a sore thumb that needs to get hammered a couple more times.
Yeah.
None of the characters really act like... none of them act in character, like from what we've experienced from any of the previous thing, especially since this is supposed to be the direct sequel to Standalone Complex and Second Gig and Solid State Society. It just doesn't work. Like, it doesn't... They don't fit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And
the storylines are just...
Yeah, the ending was just, like you said, like, what the fuck? Sorry, but we're about to talk about spoilers. The ending was just very confusing about what... I mean, I kind of see where they were going to, of, like, not understanding what reality is and how in a future society reality can change by perception or by technology, but their approach was just ugh.
One, all that shit has been done already. I mean, you're not going to out Matrix the Matrix. and that's what it really feels like they're trying to do. Like they're trying to tell the beginning story of the Matrix, and it comes off as silly. Too much. The antagonist, like I like the female cyborg antagonist, but the dude is just,
Yeah.
he's not intimidating. He's just kind of this emo. I don't know. I get he probably fits, like in any other context he would be just fine in 2045. But on top of everything else that was annoying me about it, it just was one more straw on the camel's back. The Togusa story went nowhere and was pointless.
Yep.
The connection between Balto and Purin again goes nowhere and is pointless.
Yep.
And Kusanagi doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything.
I mean,
she shows up. She's cool for a second, but
for me there was overall it really was bad, but there was some little nuggets of goodness, especially from a Cyberpunk point of view, where you had the double cross, and again, the whole series about the American Empire, which I can see why the Japanese think that way.
Absolutely. I mean, there were high points to it.
Backstabbing that the Americans kind of did. I love the I'm going to call dragoons that they had, which I think was
those
third
badass.
to last. Yeah, that was pretty good when they were doing the assault.
I mean, the action scenes when there were action scenes, they were top notch. Like, I'm not a big fan of the CGI turn that all animation seems to be taking, but it was done well.
Yeah. So overall, I'll give it a C plus, just because the story was that kind of bad at the end. And for those who might be a little young to not understand this reference, but I was expecting Bobby Ewing to come out of the shower and say, "Oh, it's all a dream. This whole past season was just all a dream."
It would have been better.
Yeah. So Spriggan, again, that came out. The action scenes and some of the elements and genre of it was very cyberpunk-ish, except for the supernatural stuff.
I mean, it's like Akira in that way. Like, where everything that goes on in the background is totally cyberpunk, even if the story that they're telling is not. I highly recommend Spriggan. The second episode is a retelling of the movie. The movie, of course, was a much better version of the story, but it was nice to see them revisit it.
Yep.
Overall, the series covers pretty much the entirety of the manga. Not to spoil anything about it, but the end does leave off for a season 2 to happen. I'm not sure where they would go with a second season. But I'd be very interested in watching it happen.
Yep. The other thing that's out, if you have HBO and HBO Max, Westworld, new season, the 4th season just came out. It's only 2 episodes in. I'm not going to talk about those until the rest of the season is over, but definitely
the story play out.
Yeah, I did watch the previous season. I binged the previous season the other week. And compared to the first and second season, the 3rd season is very cyberpunkish. The one thing I love is the app they have on their phones to commit crimes. In which, you say, hey, yeah, I'll do this job. I don't do personals, I just do theft, and cater to that, and you just get money. But yeah, that season was really cyberpunkish. And it also gets into the ideas of, if you're looking for a campaign, of how AIs evolve and how two AIs can evolve differently. Even one AI who splits their personality. And again, if you haven't seen season 3, go check it out. Here's some more spoilers. So like Dolores splits herself into multiple, basically makes copies of herself, and each one of them decides, okay, I'm going to what you thought I was going to behave, I'm going to behave something completely different, because I have a mix of these other emotions and this other personality integrated into my own, which caused a conflict. So the battling of the various AIs and their ultimate plans of, I don't know if you call it world domination, but is very interesting and very cyberpunky. So to me, Westworld Season 3 is a must-see when it comes to cyberpunk.
I'd have to concur with everything you just said. I think the last thing we want to talk about before we move into the meat of the situation is the new Cyberpunk comic series is out. Blackout, which this is at this point in it, 2 issues are out. So far, it is my favorite of the comics in the Cyberpunk 2077 line. It's about a braindance editor, which is an interesting take. I'm very excited to see where this goes.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a low-level guy who lives with a solo. And he's
a retired solo. Yeah. Like, she's out of the game. She just wants to get back into it. He programs and repairs braindance units. But he wants to be more. He actually wants to use braindance as therapy for people. I really am dying to see where this book goes. Like I said, so far this is my favorite of the comics.
Yes. I don't know. I really like You Have My Word. I want to see the 4th installment of that. I'm really digging that.
Yeah, I mean, You Have My Word is awesome, and it's got some of the best covers out there. But man, what is it, like 5 months late on the 4th issue now?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Well,
I'm starting to worry if we're ever going to see it.
Well, that's how Cyberpunk 2077 was, right? And Cyberpunk Red.
Yeah,
Cyberpunk Black.
There's a lot of parallel there.
Or Chrome Black.
They'll finish it when they finish it.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on. So tonight's subject, being the first show of the month, so it's kind of an ad hoc type of topic. This month we're actually going to be getting into how my friend Wisdom here creates scenarios and campaigns, etc. So we'll start heading off to you. I might be sharing my screen specifically to show off his site and some of his ideas and how he creates a campaign. We covered the way you do it a few episodes ago, so it's my turn now to sit in the interrogation chair, I guess. Traditionally, I would just run off the cuff. Like the first 15 years of me running a game, there was very little preparation for anything. I would, all the source books are written after the campaigns were done. I'm trying to do it the other way around now and, put more preparation into the games. Maybe I'm overdoing it a little bit, but
It's the experiment I'm running now, especially with online. So what I like to do at this point is before I start the campaign, I talk to my players. I get some kind of, I'll have an idea for a campaign, like a theme, or just a basic storyline. Like the last campaign before my present one, as I've spoken about, was Glass Road, where I'm trying to flesh out the Middle East and the irradiated ruins of that by having the group go and explore that actively. And now I'm doing Dust and Sorrow, which is the name of my current campaign, where the players are nomads who basically run escort and security for the Vagabond Express, which is a bus that just travels through the basic nomad markets. So those are the basic ideas of my more current campaigns. And before the campaign gets started proper, I have the characters make up their character sheets, get them situated in a point where they can work with each other as well as work within the confines of the game, and then I create a source book, like a guidebook for the characters. I wouldn't do this in a more loosely structured campaign, but because both of these campaigns have such a tight structure, it makes a lot of sense for me to, put out or like write these like miniature source books for them, so they know the people they're traveling with, they know the vehicles they've got, the resources that are at their disposal. With the Glass Road campaign, it was a little bit easier because everybody had the same gear pretty much. Some of them had some specialty gear based on their roles, like the Netrunner obviously had cyber decks, and techies had toolkits and whatnot. And solos were a little bit better armed, but like they were all traveling in one giant vehicle. Then it's like a super giant RV.
Like Damnation Alley?
Like a cross between Damnation Alley and a Jawa sandcrawler. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the campaign was very heavily influenced by Damnation Alley. I love that movie. I love that vehicle. There was another show in the 70s, Arc 2, that played a big influence on it too. So yeah, I detail, what the equipment that they had access to with Glass Road, because it mattered. It's not like they can go to the store in the middle of the wasteland, the irradiated ruins of the Middle East, and pick up a new gun or a new tool or even new clothing. Hell, everything was marked down. With the Nomad campaign, it's a little bit looser because they are just traveling across America. But still, what they carry on them is what they've got. It's not like they have a home they can go to. It's not like there's any place to store anything other than what's on their vehicles. So I create these source books, and you're showing it now.
Yep.
I fill it up. I fill up the bus and the convoy, the larger convoy they're traveling with NPCs. One, so they have an idea of who they're traveling with, and two, so I can keep it straight in my head. This is really a lot of preparation, it would seem, for a campaign. But it's important to note what things look like, who's where, and who's doing what they have on them. So this is what I do before the campaign starts. And of course I map out the route itself, so they know roughly where they're going from in between stops. And that's where most of the preparation takes place before the game. Once the game starts, it becomes a much looser. I kind of fall back, not all the way, but a lot of the way I fall back into that, off the cuff running. where, I'll have in my head a certain series of events that are going to happen regardless. But the players have, other than where the destination they're going to is and the timeline they've got to get there, they've got their own free reign on, what's going on around.
One question, because I'm going through your stats and the characters I can understand are customized. It seems like you're using the basic stats, and then the one thing that really drew me to a lot of your stuff is just the imagery you use, and how you play with that and add that to your campaigns. The other question I have is, did you modify every single bike to be different? Or did you take a basic model and just apply it?
Yeah. You're talking about the stats for the bikes and whatnot? I mean, basically here's a dirty little secret about every fucking piece of tech that appears on my site is I make it up as I go along. I look at it, I decide, well, this looks like, it would have this. Maybe it's really agile, not so fast, or not as doesn't carry any equipment really, but it's a zoomer. So yeah, I have basis for each of the vehicles, and then I just go from there. I've been called out a couple of times on the weights of things and some of the speeds of things. And I'm just all like, when you're doing 200 vehicles at a time, it just, you stop paying attention, especially when it gets to 4:30 in the morning and your eyes no longer function. I should probably fix it in editing, but I've done all this stuff for free, so you get what you get. When it comes to this source book, I just kind of went off of what I had elsewhere that was similar, and then tweaked it to match what I felt would be in line with what was happening.
Right.
As far as the images go, I mean, I farm images. I have just a backlog of hundreds and hundreds of images, thousands and thousands of images. And in a situation like this, like I said, it's important to know what people are carrying, what guns they're using, because you never know when an NPC might bite the bullet and you suddenly have to scrounge his corpse and this is what you find on it.
Yeah.
It saves me time later of having to search for oh well, he's a nomad, so everything they've got is unique.
And just because I'm currently in Wisdom's campaign of Dustin's Sorrows, just keep in mind that these documents that he creates are continuing to grow, right? So if you think of it as like a writer's Bible, and when I say a writer's Bible, usually a writer, when they're writing a story, will have another document to capture all the characters, who those characters are, what are their motivations, and other details, and kind of a lexicon of elements within their story so they can keep it straight. So if they decide, hey, I'm going to reference the cousin of the main character who I mentioned back in chapter 2, well, I'm in chapter 30th, you would go to the Bible to say, oh, his cousin is this, right? So to me, that's what this reminds me of.
That's exactly what this document is supposed to be. Eventually, the goal is I'm going to turn this into a campaign that I'll post on my site, like a fully fledged, source book adventure, all in one. And every session we game, more stuff gets added to it. Of course, we reference other things on the site and in the books and whatnot. Every time they enter a new state, I read from both my site, what I've written about that, as well as from Home of the Brave, just to let everybody know what's happening, what's going on.
Right.
And the document that he was just showing was that player Bible that gets added to. I've got my own copy that's separate.
And that's
they
what
don't
something
get to
that
see.
would turn into like Autumn Blade on your site.
Yeah, Autumn Blade or Dust in the Wind. Like I said earlier, like it used to be, like all the gear on Autumn Blade was just stuff that I did in the meantime in between sessions. It's just all gear. But the books like, Conflict, the African Source Book, or Dust in the Wind, Nomad Market, the NCPD source book that I wrote, just they were all written after the campaigns. Now I'm trying to write it during the campaigns. I'm trying to flesh it out as much as possible, which is, bonus on 2 levels. One, it means it's all there for the campaign. I don't have to do as much work in that regard. And 2, hopefully it'll make an interesting project at the end.
I forgot about your site and not safe for work.
Yeah. There's a lot of it that's not safe for work. Meh. I don't think there are too many children playing Cyberpunk 2020. I mean, obviously, number has grown now with the 2077 video game, but even still, most of the kids playing it are into Red, not the 30-year-old game. Really, the focus now on this campaign is interpersonal relationships and just the exploration of America proper. And that's where I try and focus this campaign. Sometimes I have better days. Sometimes I have really good days running it, as far as, keeping the NPCs interesting and the players wanting to interact with them. And sometimes I'm just off and that kind of falls to the wayside. That's going to happen with any campaign, really. You've got good days and bad days.
Yep. I totally agree with that. Especially with the campaign I'm still running. Right now I kind of got into a lull of like, I don't know where I'm going with this campaign. I don't know what I want to do with this campaign. And you're going to get that, right? You just don't know where to go to. So I kind of instructed my players, hey, if one of you guys can run some one-shots, right? Or just a quick, fun-to-do campaign for a couple weeks so I can get my creative juices back, right?
Recharge the batteries.
Exactly. Because that's one thing that I find is when I start actually playing, that's when my ideas come to me. Just playing off the ideas that other people are generating. And you get that too?
I do. I think that's why a lot of the, I didn't start preparing until about, 10, 12 years ago, which coincidentally was when people started running me on Cyberpunk. Before that, I was just pure GM for between 1990 and 2007. It was just me running. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's some good advice to those players that are out there.
Give your GMs a break.
Run the game, even if it's a one-shot. Because it helps the GM. They might have had an idea that really wasn't going anywhere, and just that off time or having a perspective of something new coming in oftentimes will just trigger their creativity and engage themselves again. Because now they're not thinking about, oh, what do I have to do to provide to the players? Now I think about, oh, what is this character? Who is this character that I'm running? What's his motivation or her motivation? And really get into character creation, which often will spark, oh yeah, this NPC that I kind of had kicking in the background, this one idea I had for my character is now I can put it to that NPC and use that as a gimmick.
I mean, every GM you've ever played with has 1,000 characters in his head that he would like to see fleshed out, but there's only so much fleshing you can do with an NPC because you don't ever want to take the focus off the PCs. Yep. So when you finally get, as a GM, when you finally get to be a PC, man, is it liberating. You finally get to flesh out and play with some of these ideas that you can then springboard into other NPCs in your game and other scenarios. Plus, there's the added bonus of, I've said this before, and it's been my philosophy from the beginning. GMs run the games that they wish they could play in. So every time you're in a game being run by somebody, you're experiencing what they would want to play in if they had their druthers. So when you run, you get to show the GM the kind of game you want to play, which is something he's going to, if he's any good, if he's observant at all, he's going to take note of that and use that to create a better game experience when he runs again for you. Because he'll have a taste of, well, these are the story ticks that get him going. These are the kind of NPCs that he likes. These are the kind of scenarios that, he finds interesting. I can incorporate that into what I find interesting and make it a better experience for everybody involved. So that's important.
Right.
There are many good reasons to give your GM a break from running and let him play.
One critique you need to, when you're going back to your site and you're doing any cleanup or decide to do any redesign, this African timeline, oh my god, the colors you chose.
Yeah. I mean, they're awful. I know. It's awful. I was just trying to keep each page looking different. And, sometimes that's an experiment that fails. In that case, it is. If I ever go back, I'll probably just turn it black and white. I mean, I want to say I did that in I don't know, early 2000s.
Yeah, and some of these colors are fine. Just that one with the timeline for Africa.
Yeah, every now and then you'll come across a page on my site that it hurts your eyes, and I apologize for that. Like I said, I was never educated on how to do this. I did it all on Netscape Composer, which is even... yeah. I mean, that was my tool. I still have CMonkey loaded onto my computer in case I want to fall back on that. So I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to program in HTML. Sue me. I was doing all this absolutely for free. When I was in high school, they didn't have computer classes. And it's all just what I could figure out at the time.
I think you did a great job, too.
The formatting on the images is super messed up. Eventually, I'm going to go back and fix that. That's one of the reasons I did the PDFs for everything, is because then I could fix the format of the images.
Right.
I probably could use less images in my stuff, but damn it, the images I find are cool, and I want to see them used for something, as opposed to just sitting in my folder going to waste.
Right.
I'm kind of, as far as back to actually crafting campaigns, though, that sets up the so where we're at, where we were looking at the site and whatnot, that sets up the overall campaign of the story. And then we move into like scenarios, like weekly games. This is where things get tricky for me, because anytime I try and plot something, the players are going to just go the other way. Doesn't matter what I do, the players always go the other way. I can plan for this event, I can like try and shoehorn events to lead them all in this way, but they'll find a way around it. So what I try to do is I try to have a couple of interesting NPCs and a couple of interesting events that are going to happen regardless, that can happen anywhere, or that happen in a place that there's no escaping. Like, they're going to go to the Nomad Market. That's the next stop on the route. So I'll have some things waiting there for them, and they'll typically be just amusing things that happen. Every time I try to like plan a combat, you guys do everything you can to avoid it, which is commendable. But that also means that anytime I've like put any effort into, creating a battle map and like this is going to happen, this scenario is waiting for you, and then you guys sneak through like the back door. Well, like take a smuggler's route through the thing and avoid the main checkpoint that you were heading straight forward last session.
Right, and for me, from either playing Cyberpunk as well as running Cyberpunk, really combat, even though there's a lot of rules around combat, just reading through those rules, you just know how deadly you can make a combat scene.
No, it's I mean, you've seen my combats, they're brutal.
And that's why as a player I want to avoid
avoiding them is not something I'm complaining about. But if there's going to be a large combat, if there's even a possibility of that, I'm trying to plan it so you don't have to like wait for me to throw down battle maps and all this and create them on the fly. But so far that has been a failed experiment, as almost every time you guys have managed to avoid it. Kudos to you. Like, you find a way to safely navigate through America. Last session I had a checkpoint set up that I was like, there's no way they can avoid this. They're going to have to go through this checkpoint. There's going to be a problem. And instead, you guys like go way the fuck out of the way and then come back around the other direction. I was not expecting that. Not much I could do.
Yeah, so just an FYI to people, we're like down in Dixie. And if you have Home of the Brave, you read about Dixie, you want to try to avoid as much of the authorities as possible.
They're currently in Alabama, which is turned into like this fascist police state, heavily reliant on Chinese corporations. And what the hell was that?
Sorry, coughing.
Oh, it sounded like you were strangling a mouse.
It was the intake.
Okay. They were supposed to travel from Alabama into like straight west through the main checkpoints into Florida, because most of Florida is this inundated mess of swamps. So instead they head south through Alabama to like old smuggler roads into the swamplands, and they managed to avoid the major checkpoints. Which is good role playing, and it's what happens, and that's great. My players you guys have gotten really, really good at avoiding the really dangerous situations. You still fall into them, but
right.
Into danger.
And I think as a GM, you start to notice the behavior of your players, so you actually will start gearing your game and the next scenarios to be a little more consistent. Or I should say, you're able to predict what your players are going to do next, and you can start
Absolutely.
writing the scenarios that head towards what you think the players are going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I try to have something that's going to interest, if not all three of you. Like I'll have something that'll interest one of you at a time. Some NPC that you meet in the market or on the side of the road. Something that you can focus on that'll give each of you a little bit of screen time to shine. Uh, Scenarios that I try and cater to your interest, to what you've shown interest in the past, and your characters' personalities. That I think that's the mark of any good GM, is to try and engage not only the players but the players' characters themselves. If they're just running, a lot of GMs will just run a straight game, and it doesn't matter who or what the players' characters are, or what their personal goals are. They're just running a campaign.
Yep.
And it kind of, I've played under them. It always feels like plug and play to me. Like, my character's here, but if it was a different character, it wouldn't matter. I try not to do that. I try and very much make the characters the focus of the game.
Yeah.
The plot and overall storyline is secondary to the players.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with doing it the other way. A lot of GMs do that. A lot of players enjoy it. I know that most of the Dungeons and Dragons games I had played in the past were kind of like that. I've got a good group now who runs more in my style. But yeah, as I was coming up in the gaming community, that's what a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and really any other game I played that I wasn't running, they were mostly like that, where it just didn't matter.
Right.
So I go the other way. I try and make the players the focus of what's going on, even if I've got this highly focused campaign. It's the players that always are going to come to the forefront.
Yeah, I think for me, when it came to Dungeons and Dragons, and it took many years for me to actually understand what role playing was, especially from running Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, yes, you take on that role of that character, but I think the way Dungeons and Dragons was always structured was, in order to improve, you have to kill monsters or get gold, or there was always some combat oriented way of improving the character versus something like
yeah, I mean,
Cyberpunk
experience was based on the monsters you kill and the treasure you acquire.
So I always found
And
that making characters in that was just, yes, I try to add a little dimension to them, but that wasn't the more important thing. Was to get the character, to get the levels, to get the magic items, to accumulate the things. And whereas Cyberpunk, I think, came along and really kicked me in the teeth of just, you want to do character development. And
yeah, I mean, that was the glory of Cyberpunk when I first discovered it. Like, I had tried Dungeons and Dragons before, and it didn't appeal to me. And then when I played Cyberpunk, it was like a light switch went off in my head, and suddenly I was all like, well, it's all character driven, and you can be clever, and that makes a difference, and there's drama, and that's built into the rules. The drama is built into the rules, whereas all the other games I had played in the past didn't have that. It was just, all the other games seemed really video gaming to me. Like, rules did not allow for real drama. They didn't compensate for cleverness or any of that. They were just roll dice, do damage.
so how did you get, and I'm sure you've encountered this, I've encountered it plenty of times, how do you get players who aren't into the character, right, or developing the character, or just more or less, hey, I just want to throw dice, I want to get loot, and just kill the next monster? How do you get them to get that different mindset?
You know, it's a long, slow process. It starts off where you give them a little bit of combat. You sate that itch while putting them in a group with other people who, are into the character development. And as they see other people and how other people are playing the game and realize, that's the majority of what's going on, 9 times out of 10, they'll want to fit into that. They'll see the enjoyment and the fulfillment other people are getting from actually, focusing on character as opposed to just rolling dice. And they'll want to experience that for themselves. Or, on the 10th chance, they won't. And they're just going to want to be murder hobos, and that's it. And if that's the case, you're left with 2 choices. You can, obviously at any point you should try communicating with them and saying, hey, give this a try, you might like it. If no matter what else works, they just want to be murder hobos, you're left with a choice of like throwing combat in at least every session to keep them interested. Or suggesting they may enjoy a game somewhere else. My philosophy about that is no gaming is better than bad gaming. And if you're not enjoying a game, don't waste your time with it. Because if you're not enjoying the game, you're not only wasting your time, you're wasting everybody else's time. Because if you show up and you're just frowning and just there to kill things while everybody else is there for character development, or the other way around, if everybody else is there to just kill things and move on, if they're all murder hobos and you're the guy with a 15-page backstory who wants to jibber jabber at every NPC you meet, you're not going to enjoy that campaign that they're in. So either give it a try or, maybe move on if that's not the campaign for you.
Yep.
Run the game, and then you can run the murder hobos yourself. You can mix it though. Combat is not something to be afraid of when running a game, especially Cyberpunk. Just understand that it's always going to have consequences. Any damage you take is going to lead to lasting. You're going to be out of action for a while. Joe's character, Citizen X on View from the Edge, and Malik are 2 of our other players right now. The Citizen X, I want to say his character is the one who got bit on the hand by a rattlesnake, and it seriously hampered his abilities for 2 sessions.
Yep.
And that's the thing. It's a dangerous, dangerous world, and as you move through it, there are going to be things that, are going to have a lasting effect. They may not be permanent, but you're not going to heal instantly. You're certainly not going to be able to call trauma team and have them arrive in 30 seconds. That's not going to happen here.
Yep.
Not in any game I run. So when it comes to scenarios, individual episodes and whatnot, I do like to have interesting NPCs. I do like to have events that are going to happen, and some events you can avoid, but others are just going to be waiting for you wherever you go, because that's the nature of being a GM. Magic.
And I think I'm a little bit opposite in the creativity or how you handle the games, right? So for me, the quick scenario is where I put in a little more detail and flesh out more than the overall campaign, because I know with an overall campaign can always be very very whimsical upon the players, right, on what their actions are.
Oh yeah.
So when I was doing my presentation, as you saw, I was very in-depth when it comes to doing one-shots, because I know I want to make sure that I have it all plotted out for that one-shot, because I know it's a one-shot, so I want to make sure that I'm not stumbling or looking up things or trying to come up
Yeah,
with ideas on the fly. Whereas a campaign, you kind of have that from that group, because what happens is, okay, you encounter something, the party will start chatting a little about off-topic stuff or in-character stuff, which is always great. And during that time, as a GM, you have the ability to listen in on what they're saying, to get ideas from their chatter, and also to think about, hey, this next thing I wanted to do, I didn't really have fleshed out, so I can start concentrating a little more on how I can handle it now that I know where the players are, what they're doing, and what's their expectation of what's going to happen next.
absolutely. And you raise an interesting point. For smaller, I mean, really, the amount of work that I've put into the overall campaign on this, with the source books or the player guidebooks at the start and all that, that only works because of the tight structure of the overall story, the overall concept of the game. And in any other game that I've run, that wouldn't work. Like, say I'm running private detectives, or just a group of edgerunners who are freelance mercenaries. Like, that level of detail beforehand would never work, because the players are going to have access to whatever they want for the most part. They're going to have homes, or at least bolt holes somewhere. And in those situations, the scenario, the individual missions, as you said, they become more important. They become a little bit more of the focus. When I was running the private detective campaign that I did a few years ago, I cheated a lot. I stole. I've talked about this before. I stole the plots from noir stories and old detective novels and movies and things like that. I like the Maltese Falcon and things of that nature. A lot of Dashiell Hammett works. That worked for me. That worked in that scenario. When I was running a mercenary campaign, that was almost pure freelance, out of my head, but it was still, they've got this job, they're paid to go do this job. It becomes much more scenario based. So you try and create this interesting thing where the stuff is going to happen. Like, you've got to infiltrate this base over here. That's almost a much easier way to run the game, because it's very much, here's the goal for today, go accomplish it, then come back.
Yep. I think when you do, I'm not going to say steal, but are influenced by other storylines and actors or characters
Homages.
and novels, right? I think the players who know the reference oftentimes will appreciate that reference in it, because it gives them some type of familiarity to who that character is, right?
Yeah, and if they notice it, if they realize what's happening, they'll fall into that mood. They'll get into the idea of it, and once they realize what genre the thing is taking place in, they kind of go wholeheartedly for it. Like the private detective game, once they realized that they were basically playing Humphrey Bogart, it influenced everything else. Like, suddenly they were like, I had one character who would narrate what was happening to him. Like, the dame walked into the room, she smelled of sunflowers and peaches. The cigarette hung loose in her lip like a wild comma. I mean, that's just, it was awesome.
Yeah, that is good.
And yeah, it's good role playing moments, so you can play off that, and then it's the evolution of games like that where you even in a goal based game, a scenario based game where every week you got to go do this thing and accomplish this. it still then allows you to flesh out the characters. That's why I really don't like running more than 4 people, because if you run more than 4 people, you lose that aspect. You lose that ability to, focus
Right.
on the characters as opposed to the objective. And that's just the kind of gaming that I enjoy. I enjoy character-focused games, which is why I've never done convention gaming. It's just never been anything that interested me, or one-shots or anything like that, with the odd exception. Because I like character-driven games. I see the appeal of objective campaigns. It's just not my bag.
So what would you say, like, from general percentage-wise of coming up with ideas? Do you feel like you're 50-50, you pull stuff from various medias, or versus original ideas, or is it a little higher, lower in the other direction?
I mean, there are degrees of originality. Nobody has... It's pretty rare for somebody to have a completely original idea. So there are you get influenced by stuff, and then you make it your own, and there'll be degrees of the originality to that. When I was running the freelance mercs, the actual campaign itself was as much of off the top of my head as it can get, but I would get influenced by media for like locations, or maybe a twist in the story or something like that. So when I was running just freelance willy-nilly like that, I'd say the originality was at a higher percentage, whereas with the more recent campaigns where it has a more focused storyline, the originality is going to be more of like a 60% originality and a 40% inspiration from something else, because when you're trying to write down stuff, more of that influence leaks into whatever you're doing, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Like the Glass Road campaign. Like I was describing it, you immediately went to Damnation Alley, because of course that was a major influence. And even though I'm going off the events that happened in the Cyberpunk 2020 source book with the Middle East meltdown, and they're trying to explore what's happened since then. Like for a campaign, I've never seen that done as a campaign before. But in the idea of stories, like obviously, like you said, Damnation Alley, Arc 2, really, those are the two big ones. But yeah.
So speaking
when
of
it comes to like
Glass,
go ahead.
So speaking of Glass Road, when is that going to be hitting your site?
See, we only got about halfway through it in the campaign.
Oh.
There were other things I wanted to flesh out. I don't know that we'll ever go back to it. I would have enjoyed that. But due to circumstances beyond control, like it kind of left off halfway through. So I'm going to revisit it. It will eventually hit the site, God willing.
Because I've seen it coming soon for a little bit of time.
Yeah, it's been coming soon for like 12 years now. So,
well,
I apologize for that.
You are influenced by Altarsorian, and Altarsorian is known for getting it right and delivering it.
I mean,
when it's ready.
I do feel super bad. The health problems I've got prevent me from getting in a comfortable place to write.
I get it, man.
I like that source book is about a third of the way done. The source book I'm working on now for Dust and Sorrow, the actual source book itself is probably about halfway done. The rest of it is really just the campaign that follows and what I can write down from that. And then I've got another section of the Night City Guide, like a very small section, but it's something I detailed out quite a bit. That it's about 60%, 75% done.
Yeah, I gotta
Really,
get
what it
you
needs.
one of the areas that I've been kind of concentrating on and fleshing that out and typing it up for you.
Absolutely. Um, Really, where I'm stuck with that is creating the maps. I was using Corel Photo Paint, and I don't have access to that like I did at the time.
GIMP.
But I want it to look as uniform to the combat zone guide as I can get it.
Download GIMP, man.
Okay.
It's a free version of Photoshop.
I don't know Photoshop.
It's
I
a
can't imagine it's too different from Photo Paint, but yeah.
probably not. So it's definitely
Uh,
a utility, open source utility that is you can do
I mean, it's
a
the one
lot of
everybody
things.
uses.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tutorials out there on how to work with it. So so if you're looking for for a graphics program, that is the cheapest and most robust way of getting it done. If you're looking for something that's
I think
more,
John was promoting that to me
yeah,
last time we talked.
and then the free version for a vector program, I think, is Inkscape.
Yeah,
I think that's what it's called.
I don't know what it.
Yeah, I'll send you
I will look
links
into that.
and get you that. But yeah, those are two utilities that you can definitely use for your games. And again, to all players, if you guys are looking to get beyond MS Paint or some other simplistic utility for doing art, there's a couple out there. GIMP is more for photos, so it's like if you've ever heard of Photoshop, right? Rendering, doing filters, and just manipulating photos. GIMP is the utility. If you're looking for what are called vector, so a vector is more. How do I describe it? It's more of a point system versus just pixel. So with a vector, you have the ability to put in a point and zoom in as close as you want, and you should not get any blurriness versus like a pixeled image. So you can zoom in, like to one point, and it'll continue to have the same resolution as it was if you zoomed out. So it's a little more difficult to work with vector programs than it is with like GIMP and pixels. But two graphic utilities that you guys can check out.
Yeah, those sound cool. I feel like I did a lot of ranting and kind of moved off the point, but I'm not really sure how
I
to.
think you weren't necessarily ranting. You were talking about your creative process, which I believe is the topic of the night, right?
Sure. If anybody's got any questions,
Yeah, by all means.
I would be more than happy to answer them. I don't know how many people are still in our audience at the moment. If anybody is still listening,
There's 5 people. Looks like. Well, hopefully we'll get more on when it gets to YouTube. But yeah, so for my campaign currently, like I said, I was in a lull. But then, and again, I might be considered a sadistic GM for doing so, but I really wanted to like do a gut punch to the party, because I still had this idea because they're currently hunting or going down a trail. The trail that they were following kind of ended. However, they there's some past sins that they did that I was like, yeah, it's about time that they have some some repercussions for some of the actions they did. So
There you go.
how I approached that was basically I looked at one of the players' backgrounds, saw they had a current lover, and let's just say that lover met a very grisly end, and that player was
Oh
then
no,
in the process of being framed for her murder. So,
not heads in the refrigerator.
close heads on the kitchen counter.
I mean, sometimes it's still a viable trope, and sometimes it's
It
yeah.
is, and it's and again, sorry for the noise. My mic fell off its stand. If you're hearing feedback from me, but for me, it's there are repercussions for the actions that the party committed.
Yeah, I think if they can't catch you, they will go after your loved ones.
And they had loose ends, so this loose end is now making an appearance, and that's kind of where I really didn't know where I wanted to go with my campaign, and luckily there was a lull. One of my players actually ran a one shot. She ran a game called Monster of the Week, which was kind of fun. It's very simplistic rule set, and very quick to create a character and really hit the ground running. So, but yeah, during that game, it's just driving home from work, thinking about what I need to get this game back into action, and that's where I came to, like, okay, you know what, I need to go into the character's life path and pull something out and come up with some stories. And that kind of prompted me to look at another character and not necessarily go after that character's loved ones, but hey, there's an enemy that this character has. Well, he's tied to certain corporations, and he was a childhood friend that kind of turned into an enemy. Well, he's still a childhood friend, so
Life path is the
yeah.
GM's
And
best tool in Cyberpunk. I mean, if
even
you're at a loss for ideas, just look at your player's character sheet.
yeah, and don't look at enemies as enemy in the character's background as okay, they're always going to either attack the players. This particular enemy, the reaction was avoid the scum. Well, okay, so this character or this enemy is now in trouble, and he knew that the player was kind of an upstanding kind of guy, so he's trying to, I'm on the run, I'm being hunted, and who am I going to turn to but an enemy of mine who I knew in high school and knew is an upstanding guy. Maybe he'll help me, right? So you can always use enemies even to interact with the players, not necessarily just to attack them, but to actually get them
Yeah,
into
no,
a new
absolutely.
storyline.
I mean, even the smallest events that happen in a player's life path, like if you work them right, if they through the natural evolution of the game, they can become the focus of the whole campaign. It's like I just said, the life path is such an amazing tool for both players and GMs in fleshing out, the character, in providing motivation, in giving GMs, story hooks to throw off of. Yeah, use that as much as possible. Hell, use life path to just generate NPCs. It'll give you their own, like, it doesn't have to be the full life path, but just make a couple of rolls for them. See what, maybe led them to be the characters that they are.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this in the past.
Many times.
And we'll keep on reiterating what a great tool it is. But yeah, those are some things that I think from a creative point of view is, if you're stuck, look at life path. Look at the characters, and of course you might be staring at it for an hour or two, looking at the various character backgrounds. One great thing I like during the COVID time was you had things like the VTTs, so players would enter their characters and you could actually see those characters and all their information. Versus sometimes I know, like especially playing at the table, the characters would take their sheets with them, or the players would take their sheets with them, so you don't always have that background.
There's a dirty secret of mine. From the moment I began running Cyberpunk, which was when I began running games, period. I had the rule that the character sheets have to stay with me, for many reasons. One, because after like the first month and like three players continuously forgetting their character sheets or losing them, I was like, well, that's just not going to work. Leave your character sheets here. I had another guy who would, he'd take his character sheet home, and suddenly on the next game, he had all this gear that he didn't have, or he edit his character skills and whatnot. Like, no more of that.
Well, I played in a different game. This other GM gave me, full conversion.
Yeah, you're playing with a different GM for Cyberpunk? Please introduce me to him. Oh, he doesn't. Yeah.
He's not around from here, so.
I mean, and, lastly, I would actually, I've said this before, and you can find all these images on my site. Like, I used to hand draw the characters in the little frickin' boxes of each character sheet. And,
for the players?
it's like the size of a Post-it note. Yeah.
Wow. Kudos to you.
Yeah, no, there some of them are pretty bad.
Well.
But again, I was drawing him in the thing the size of a Post-it note. I still try and draw. I would like to draw the characters, but now it generally takes up I do it full page size. Yeah. And then, scan it in.
I mean,
color it there.
Some of your drawings are pretty good. For the style that you draw. And those who want to go see Wisdom's wonderful art can go into the reference data on this site, and there's an image gallery there.
There is an image gallery there. If you just go to the file project, you can get to it from there too. But yeah, and I would study their character sheets. I'm not kidding when I say that I get as invested into my players' characters as they do. And I try, like, for me, the game is all about character development, and I'm telling a story about these characters. I don't go to a movie. Like, I know they've done some experimental television shows where the cast changes every episode. There's a reason they don't last, because people want to get invested in characters.
Yeah.
They want to get invested in storylines, not have that change every time they turn around.
So I know at least the game that you're running for us, for me, you're very hands-off on what players do, but have you ever had to, in a campaign, kind of what they call as railroading players into certain situations?
It's never really been an issue with me. As a GM, I don't think I've ever had to railroad beyond just like, this is your, like I said, in objective-based games that I've run, like, this is your target. This is the whole purpose of the game. So if you don't go do this, well, you're just going to sit around doing nothing for the next couple of hours. But this is what you're getting paid to do. So, and I would usually have, if they decided they didn't want to do it for whatever reason, and that happened a couple of times, I'd have like backup plans, other scenarios that, would take place. But as far as like, you've got to do it this way and you've got to go down this road, No, I try never to railroad players. It always feels false to me whenever it's happened to me. Like, I can tell I'm being forced along this path. There's no other options. It always kind of takes me out of the game when that happens. Just like I don't do Mary Sue NPCs. Like, I'll have NPCs, and they'll be part of the game, but they're never going to outshine the characters at anything. They're there to fill the spaces that the characters don't. Like right now, there's not a netrunner in the group, so you've got that. Right now, you've kind of got that lady scientist she's not a netrunner, but she can at least fake it, yeah. As it were. Like, she's got a little bit of skill.
Yeah, I think
there are medics in the larger convoy that can deal with injuries and whatnot.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to NPCs, I try not to outshine the players with that particular NPC unless I'm using that NPC to show my players how it's done, right? Either bringing in an expert solo and how that expert solo would handle a particular situation, right? Versus how the players either they do, the brute force methodology versus the subtle methodology of getting something done and showing, hey, this is what an expert solo does. He does it subtly. He checks all the corners. Well, yeah. He makes sure that he's not getting caught flat-footed by any of the other NPCs.
You've got to be real careful when doing that, though. Yes. I mean, it happened. Like the convoy you're in, there's 3 solos who ride Outrider for the security of the greater convoy, as it were. And one of them's a scout. He rides way ahead. But they don't ever outshine the characters in anything that the characters are supposed to be specialists at. Right. And if you guys do meet somebody who is a specialist in that same field, and he does have something to impart, it's never going. There's nothing that bugs me more than when a GM introduces a super powerful character who just comes in and just wipes the floor with the party. Just like he's on the same side, but he's just so overpowering. The GM just gives him godlike abilities as part of the writer's fiat, and it just playing D&D was always it was always the mark of a really, I'm not gonna say a bad GM, but certainly it put me off the situation completely. When a GM would have like Elminster show up and just like if anybody talks shit to him, he'd just slap them down like a bitch, and yet at the same time he's hiring us to go do this job. Like, what the hell is that about? You're fucking Elminster. You can snap your fingers and accomplish this task. What do you need us for? And if you do need us, why are you treating us like garbage?
Right. But I mean, for the example NPCs I do, it's never going to be this. The NPC is going to be with the party forever. It's usually one session in one certain situation to kind of give the party inspiration of, oh, okay, so as a GM, this is how you do a combat scenario or an ambush.
Oh, absolutely, and there's no problem with having a legendary, whatever appear. It just has to be used, subtly. Like if the characters are getting their ass kicked, there's nothing wrong with having the cavalry show up. If you've got a solo who just rushes into everything head first, there's nothing wrong with having somebody who's fairly well known and respected in the field to come in and show them a different way. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of storytelling. Like Obi-Wan didn't outshine Luke. He just was there to be a, show him how it was done.
Yep.
And that's just part of storytelling. There's nothing wrong with that. It's my only problem comes in, like I said, when the GM just comes along or just brings that character in or their own pet creation to come in and just kind of bully the players. Just kind of show off his own, how badass his creation is or how badass Elminster is by having him slap around the players a little bit, even if the players are being obnoxious. It just always comes off as, oh.
I was about to say, sometimes the players deserve to get a little smacked down at
I'm not
times.
saying they don't. If your character starts talking shit to the ninja master, don't be surprised if you get a shuriken in the asshole. If you're talking shit to the master hacker, who if you're talking shit to Ray Bartmos or whatever, or if you're just doing some troublemaking shit, and suddenly sex videos of you with an ostrich are popping up everywhere, you've got yourself to blame.
Yep.
Just don't ever be like ridiculous about it. Don't be a bully, basically, as a GM. You're not there to, how I feel about antagonistic GMs, and that's part of it. And don't put players in situations that, well, that's a whole nother topic. I'm not going to get into that right now. But yeah, legendary NPCs, you can use them sparingly, use them subtly, and don't bully players just for the sake of bullying players. That's never going to end well. I've seen players walk from campaigns because of it. Hell, I've done it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're
I
close.
forget what got us in.
Just talking about NPCs and how you use them.
I mean, I love NPCs. I try very hard to make the NPCs my players interact with, whenever possible. I try and make them memorable. I try and flesh them out a little bit. It doesn't always work. Some days I'm having an off day. Some days I just don't know what that character's voice is. But if the player's take an interest in an NPC at any point, holy shit, you've got them hooked. And that's the ultimate goal for me, is to get my players invested in the characters and the campaign enough that they kind of help me flesh it out themselves.
Great.
The more collaborative the story, when you're GMing, the better it gets.
So, any last words of wisdom?
I think I just gave them.
All right.
The ultimate goal for running a collaborative story-based game is collaboration. As a GM, you want your players to be invested in everything as you are. As a player, you want your GM to be as invested in the game as you do. If it's just, if that's the kind of gaming you're into, if you're just into, rolling dice and doing damage and moving from one scenario to the next, that's cool. That's your bag. I don't have any advice for that because that's not the way I run or play. So you want to ask somebody else about that. But if you want to run a story-based campaign, the more collaboration you can get, or not collaboration, but at least investment. The more investment your players can get into their own characters, into the game, into what's happening in the game, the NPCs, the events, the overall plot, or even just side plots. The more of that you get, the better the game will be, always. So pay attention to what your players are doing. Pay attention to, what they tell you. Talk frequently about, what they want to see in the campaign, or at least give them the opportunity to, express that. And listen. At the end of the day, it's a game of all RPGs are about communication. So, yeah.
Agreed. All right, I think we can end that here. Before we take off, just FYI, so our next episode, we're going to do a deep dive into the source book Protect and Serve, the cop source book. I think there's a bunch of goodness there that we can definitely talk about. We're also doing some work trying to get some other guests to join us again, to do some possible interviews. That's still in the works. Hopefully we'll be able to get some people a little more in the upcoming episodes. Other than that, I am Cybersmily. You can find me on Cybersmily Datafort.com or .net. It's a site that has a bunch of utilities for both Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2020. I also have a Cybersmily Datafort Discord, so you can actually report any bugs or enhancement ideas, and also keep up to date with my release schedules around my site. I'll be posting there, and you can also find me on Reddit under Cybersmily or my Cybersmily Datafort Reddit, and I'm also on all the Cyberpunk Discords, or the majority that I know of. There could possibly be more out there, but I try to be on all of them. So if you hit at Cybersmily, there's a good chance you're going to hit me, and I have open ears for anybody who wants to chat with me.
Amen to that. I am Wisdom000. My site is Datafortress2020. It is chock full of source books and gear books and rules that I've written, as well as I have a archive of most of everything that's ever been put on the net for Cyberpunk 2020, Cyber Generation. Haven't started compiling Red yet, but that'll go up there eventually. I am on Facebook. You can find me by the name Derek Bernier. I am on Discord as well, although I'm not very active on it.
Well, you have a Datafortress 2020 Facebook group, don't you?
Yes, I head the Datafortress 2020 Facebook group. I'm a moderator for the Cyberpunk 2020 Facebook group. I'm also on Cybernation Uncensored's Facebook group. If you want to talk Cyberpunk, I am always there, always happy to do so. If you've got questions for Cybersmily or myself, or things you want to see addressed in future episodes, these are the ways to get a hold of us.
Yep.
My email is readily available on my site, and Smiley's is available on his.
Also, check out Cybernation Uncensored's Discord. We have a channel on that Discord, which we post topics, and we are all ears if you want to give us some topics or have ideas on what you guys want to hear us talk about, or our point of view on things. We are more than willing to listen to you and give you feedback.
We'd like to thank Cybernation Uncensored for hosting us. As always, thank you, Rob.
Yep, thank you, Rob.
We appreciate it.
And
we appreciate you, our listeners.
Yep. Alrighty. We are out of here. Talk to you later.
Night.
Cybernation Uncensored.